TLDR! Today, I'm going to show you how you can improve your students' online dance classes from sounding like this.
Okay guys, so here we go. I want you to really hit with the top rock a little bit, and then we're going to go into freestyle. Let me play some music for you. 5, 6, 7, and.
To sounding like this.
Okay guys, so basically once we finish up the top rock, I want you to just go into your freestyle. So let me play a music real quick. Ready? 5, 6, 7, and.
All you need is a laptop or computer with a webcam. Sorry, this won't work with smartphones or tablets. A USB interface mixer, wireless mic, this very specific wireless headphone. What's the total cost? Anywhere from $170 to $270 depending on your needs. Let's get dancing.
Done. Roll that intro.
What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. So last week I talked about how people that are transitioning their office work to home, how they can improve their video conferencing quality by simply adding some lights and choosing what kind of microphone they want to use. Now, as far as dance instructors and other athletic instructors, we face a completely different problem, and that problem is audio. Because of what we do, we need to step back quite a ways from our laptop and webcam so that the students can see our whole body as we instruct. The problem is when we talk from a distance to the laptop, the microphone that's sitting 15 feet away is not going to pick up our voice that well, and it's going to sound very, very noisy, hissy, echoey, and it's not going to make the students be able to hear us very well. And this is going to be even worse when we start playing music, because when we start playing music and we're trying to instruct, it just sounds like a huge jarbled mess, and the students will not be able to follow along that well. So today, I'm going to show you how you can change all of that. The students will be able to hear your voice very, very clearly, and when you play music, it's going to sound as if they are playing Spotify off their speakerphone, so super, super clear. But before we get started, this video is broken up into two parts. The first part is a straight up step-by-step tutorial. I'm not really going to go into too much depth about what's going on here. The second part of the video is where I will go a little bit more in depth, but I'm going to try to field off a lot of questions that I think I'm going to have from this video. Specifically, I bought this, does it work? Can you buy this? Will that work? And I'm going to break all that down so that if you do decide to buy something different, that you have enough knowledge to understand how to actually set it up without asking for help. Because a lot of this is very basic. You just need to have an understanding of how things work. And lastly, the things that I have selected here is based on budget, because I know that this is temporary. At some point in time, we will be able to teach in a studio again. So at this point in time, we don't really need to be spending an arm and a leg to get things going. Could you buy something more expensive? Absolutely. But I think you would only want to get that kind of equipment if you are actually doing this already. You're making a living doing these workouts live with people. So if you are, then yes, you can spend more money. But for now, this is really just a budget solution that's going to get you going, and it's going to work extremely well. So without further ado, let's get started. First thing we need to do is get the required equipment to make all of this work. And the main heart of it is the USB mixer that also serves as a USB audio interface. And usually if you look at the Amazon pictures in the back, if the back has a little USB port that says USB interface, you're good to go. The next thing we want to make sure the mixer has is something that says USB assigned a monitor, or maybe there's a knob that says USB or computer. Basically, this is signaling to us that we can control the computer's volume of whatever's playing on it through this mixer. So that's very important. The second thing we need is a wireless microphone, and I have specifically chosen the Saucony Tiny because for $100 currently, it gives you everything you could possibly need. It's a very small wireless microphone setup, and if you want to, you can either clip the transmitter microphone directly onto your shirt, or if you want to run the included lavalier mic, you can wire it up that way if you so choose. The third thing we need is an XLR to 3.5 millimeter adapter. 3.5 millimeter basically just means a regular headphone jack that you've seen before. And this is simply so that we can plug our wireless microphone into the mixer board. And last but not least, we need a pair of very low latency headphones. And this is so we can hear the music as we're instructing. First, we're going to set up our mixer. Connect the XLR to 3.5mm adapter into channel 1. Now, traditionally on the Sakani, we would actually plug the adapter into here, but we're actually going to use the headphone port instead because it's much louder and we want to feed the mixer the loudest signal possible. And lastly, we're going to connect the 3.5mm cable from the Avantry Bluetooth transmitter to the phone's monitor port. Now let's set up our volume knobs so that we have a good starting point. Under the channel 1, we see a gain knob. We're going to turn that to 50%. Now don't worry about these faders here, just leave them where they are. Basically, this is so you can change the bass and the treble of your sound. Further down is the channel 1 fader. We're also going to turn that to 50%. Basically, all these settings we just did here will only affect channel 1, your wireless microphone. Moving to the second column, we have the monitor knob up top. We're going to turn that to about, I would say 30%, as that's a pretty good starting point. And last but not least, the final knob on the bottom, the USB line, we're going to turn that to 50% as well. Near that knob, there is a USB assigned to monitor button. We're going to press that down. To be able to hear ourselves through the monitor, we need to make sure the tape in is set correctly. So we need to press down the assign to mains button while leaving the assign to monitor button up. And lastly, we're going to turn the main mix fader knob to about 75%. Next, we're going to set up our mixer to the laptop or computer. First, you're going to plug in the USB cord from the mixer into the mixer and into the laptop and desktop. With everything initially set up, go ahead and turn on the mixer. On a Mac, we're going to hit the Apple logo on the top left and go to System Preferences. We're going to select the Sound menu. Now we're going to go to the Output tab and we're going to select the USB audio codec. Then we're going to go to the Input tab and do the exact same. On a Windows computer, on the bottom right, there's a sound speaker icon. You're going to right-click it, and then you're going to select Open Sound Settings. Over here, same thing, you're going to go to the Output and make sure you're using the USB audio codec. And then on the Input, same thing, you're going to make sure you're using the line USB audio codec. Now there's an additional setting here in the sound control panel. You're going to go into the recording tab and you're going to also select the line USB audio codec. Select the properties button over here. In the properties, you're going to go over to the advanced tab and make sure you're selected at 2-channel 16-bit 48 kHz. Now let's set up your wireless microphone. Turn on both Sakani devices. Be sure that both devices say the same channel number on the bottom left. You can change it if you want to by pressing the gear button and then using the plus or minus buttons to go to different channels. Be sure to turn your microphone transmitter to volume 15 with the exact same plus or minus buttons. Now clip the microphone to your shirt collar. If you plan to use the lavalier mic, plug it into the transmitter and then clip it onto your shirt collar. As we begin dialing your wireless microphone levels, make sure on your Windows and Mac that you're still in your sound settings page, specifically the input page. As you begin to speak, you're going to see these levels move up and down. Our goal is to try to get it somewhere around here or roughly 60 to 70%. At this point in time when you are testing, you have to use your true teaching voice, whether that be loud or soft. If you are already hovering around the 60 to 70%, then you're good. If you are louder than 70%, go ahead and use the main mix dial and turn it down until you reach around the 60 to 70% range. If your voice is too low, we're going to start by going to the channel 1 gain knob and we're going to turn it louder, but make sure that the knob does not go past 75%. If you're still not loud enough, go down to the channel 1 fader knob at the bottom, and we're also going to turn that louder, but make sure we don't go more than 70%. This is to ensure that we have the best sound quality without a lot of hiss. At this point in time, you should be close to 60 to 70%. Now let's set up your music. Go ahead and turn off your wireless mic so that we don't pick up any extra sounds. Now on your computer, open up Spotify, iTunes, or whatever music app you want to use. Play one of your class songs. At this point, the meter that we've been looking at should be bouncing up and down again in your system preferences. We want to try to get it to around 60%. To adjust the music's volume, use the line USB blue knob here, and you're going to turn it up or down until you can get the music to about 60%. We're almost done. Now we're going to set up our wireless headphones so we can hear what's going on when we're teaching. First, we're going to plug the Advantree's transmitter into a power source. You can either plug the USB into your laptop if you have an extra USB port available, or you can even use a power bank or a regular USB wall charger. Go ahead and turn on the transmitter with the side switch here. Double check to make sure your 3.5mm cable that's coming out of the monitor of the mixer is going into the TX input on the back of the transmitter. At this point in time, press the aux and optical button to make sure that the aux is selected. Turn on your headphone by pressing the middle button for about a second. These two units should already be paired out of the box, but if for some reason it's not, turn off the headphones by holding the middle button again. Now press the Bluetooth button on the transmitter here. It should verbally tell you that it's going into pairing mode. While keeping the two units really close to each other, you're going to press the middle button on the headphones again, except this time you're going to hold it until you see the lights flashing blue and red. At this point, once it stops flashing those two colors, you are connected. Now turn your wireless mic back on, play one of your class songs. At this point in time, you should be able to hear everything from the music and your own voice when you're speaking. Go ahead and use the monitor knob here to adjust how loud you'd like to hear everything. The final step is setting up your video conferencing software, whether you're using Zoom, Google Hangouts, or Skype. Essentially, we're going to go into your audio settings wherever that may be for your program. And similar like before, we just need to make sure that the output, input, or headphones and microphone, however they have it labeled, we need to make sure that they are set to the USB sound codec on both of them. Now, if your video conferencing software has something like auto mic level gain or auto mic settings, we want to turn those off, as we've already set everything through the mixer. In terms of Zoom specifically, we're going to go into the Advanced tab, and we're going to turn off the suppression of background noises here and here. And hey, congratulations, you're now completely set up so that students can hear your voice clearly as well as the music. Now that ends part 1, but before we go to part 2, I just want to say that all the equipment that I talked about in part 1 and all the recommendations I'm going to give in part 2, you can find them in the affiliate links down below. Now, when you use them, it costs nothing extra to you, but it does give me a little commission so I can continue making videos like this for you, and you'd basically be directly supporting this channel. So thank you if you choose to use those links. So without further ado, let's go into part 2 where I'm going to go a little bit in depth about how certain things work, as well as trying to field some of your questions ahead of time, because I have a feeling some people might be asking, what if I buy this? What if I buy that? And unfortunately, I can't test everything out there known to man, but what I can do is give you some information so you know what to look for to see if it will work for you. So the first thing I want to address is the budget for this whole setup. So it's going to come to approximately $275 for the whole thing. And I'm not going to lie, $275 during this time for a job that's only temporary, it's a lot of money, and we know we're going to eventually be able to teach in a studio again. But I just want you to know that I did a whole bunch of studying and research on which products to pick. I read a bunch of Amazon reviews, then compared them to the YouTube results that I was seeing in other YouTubers when they were testing out the equipment, including my own. And this is the cheapest you can go while getting quality. In terms of could you cut any of them out? The only thing that you can cut out of the whole setup is if you fit a very specific criteria. So the wireless headphones. The reason the wireless headphones is there is because for hip hop teachers, Zumba teachers, where you are actually showing it with music and you're doing it, you need to be able to hear the music with low latency so you can do it in time. But if you are a ballet teacher, specifically teaching advanced students, we are very versed in just teaching with our hands and vocabulary. So if you're doing that, then you can probably just use regular headphones that you have. You don't need a wireless headphone for you to be far back and showing everything with music. So that's probably the only thing you can cut out if you're a ballet teacher teaching advanced students. So let's talk about the mixer real quick and whether or not you can purchase a different one. So one thing I want to talk about is when I was telling you guys to adjust your wireless microphone's audio, I specifically said use the gain first, then use the fader next, and don't go past 70. So why did I say that? Well, if you go past 70, you're going to start introducing some hissing sounds because these preamps that are inside the mixer, they're not the top grade versions you can get where you can go all the way to 100 and basically be crystal clear. At some point, you're going to introduce hiss. So 70% is approximately where I would say that's about as acceptable as I would go. Now, why did you adjust the gain first and then adjust the fader next? So the gain is kind of telling your microphone just how much power am I going to give you? Like how fast can your car top out at? So if I say 70%, 70 miles per hour, that's as far as it will go. So then when the fader is going from 0 to 100, it basically only goes from 0 to 70, okay? So basically when you play around with these two, you can get yourself the best sounding quality without getting a lot of hiss. And for the most case, the gain is going to be set a little bit close to as high as it can go without getting hiss, and then your fader can do the finer adjustments. Now, the other faders for your highs, lows, and balance, those you don't really need to play around with unless you specifically want to add more bass or add more treble into your voice. But generally speaking, you really don't need to be playing with it that much. In terms of buying a different type of USB mixer, that's not the ones that I'm recommending in the video and also in the descriptions down below. What you're really looking for is to make sure the back of the mixer has the USB plug there, and it should say USB interface or USB audio interface on the back, because we need to tell the computer that this is a thing that you should be aware of. But most importantly, we need to make sure that the computer understands that this thing needs to be a microphone. Because when you look at other USB mixers that have a USB on the top where all the stuff is, all the knobs and stuff, that's more for plugging a flash drive with a bunch of MP3s on it. You could plug your computer in, but it's only taking in sound, and your computer is not using it as a microphone. That is the most important part. If the computer can't use the mixer as a microphone, then the Zoom or Skype or Google Hangouts, it doesn't know that that's what it's looking for its audio source. So that's why you really need to make sure that whatever mixer you decide to buy, it needs to have the USB port in the back with the USB interface logo on top of it, so you know that the computer can use it in that way. Now, the second important thing if you decide to buy a different mixer is to make sure that somewhere on the top of the mixer, there's a USB assign a monitor button, and there's clear markings of computer, USB, and there's a little fader or volume rocker knob specifically dedicating volume to that source. If you see any of those things, then you know that you're able to pull audio from the computer into the mixer. So that's something you really need to make sure you have, otherwise you won't be able to play any music from your computer. And the last thing you need to look for if you're not selecting any of the mixers that I've put down in the links is what is the monitor or the headphone port like? Is it a regular headphone jack that's a 3.5 millimeter, or is it a more standard industry quarter jack? If it's a quarter jack, don't worry, you just need a regular little adapter that you plug into the headphone cable for the Bluetooth headphones, and then you simply plug it in and it'll work just fine. Now let's talk about the wireless microphone. If you're familiar with my channel before, I've done a whole lot of reviews on a bunch of different wireless microphones, and you might have actually passed the video at some point. The reason I chose the Saucony Tiny is not because it's the best, and it's definitely not the worst. It's the best overall value. Because currently, as of recording this video, it costs $100, and that gives you the whole setup. You get a wired microphone if you want to use a wired microphone, or you could just clip it on, and it gives you all the required cables. Once you go into the more expensive routes, you might actually have to buy additional equipment. So the next one up is the Blink 500. That one is definitely very popular, but it costs $180, and it's basically the same thing as the Saucony Tiny. It's just using a different type of frequency. The Sakani Tiny is using something called 500 megahertz range, and at this point in time, that range, there's not a whole lot of things going on here. All the other options that I'm going to be talking about here, they use the 2.4 gigahertz band, which is the exact same thing as your Wi-Fi, your microwave. There's a whole lot of that flying around. So they have to compete with a bunch of different frequencies. The Sakani Tiny does not need to do that, so therefore your signal should be pretty good for the long haul. Now, the one that's most popular that everyone's looking at is the Rode Wireless Go. And it's definitely one of my most favorite wireless audio kit sets. But it costs $200 and you don't get a wired microphone with it. If you want to use a wired microphone, there's a $30 one that I will link down below that actually does quite good. But generally speaking, again, should you spend $100 or $230, which is nearly the entire budget of the whole set for just the wireless microphone? And that's why I'm saying, like, I'm really thinking about you guys on a budget. But if you are working in this profession where you do a whole bunch of live workouts, then yeah, that might be worth it to you. But in terms of my overall recommendation of which wireless clip-on microphone is the best, hands down, it's the Pico mic. The Pico mic is so small and it clips onto your shirt and you'll literally forget that it's there and you can move around. You don't have to deal with wires and it's not going to flop around like the Sakani or the Blink or the Rode. It literally is just flawless for athletic instructors online. But the major problem is that's $450. So that's nearly twice the budget of the whole setup. Not only that, they sell out every time it gets back in stock. So there's no telling when you're actually going to be able to get it. So hopefully there's going to be more coming into the market, because if you are looking to upgrade your entire live workout setup, the Pico mic is easily the best one for this entire setup. Now, you might be wondering if there are any cheaper options that are under $100. And there are, but I would say use them at your own risk. I have looked at a couple of their reviews, and while they did sound good, they were all going into smartphones and not going into a camera. A smartphone is going to process the crap out of your audio because it wants to eliminate as much noise as possible and try to bring out your voice. When you're plugging it into a mixer that's not a smartphone, it's not going to do that. The mixer is going to take whatever it gets and that's basically what you hear. So I don't think it's going to work that well. And the Sakani Tiny actually already does a little bit of processing inside. And so you're going to be able to get a much better quality sound coming out of the Sakani Tiny than something that's $30. But again, I leave that up to you. I really don't know if it's going to work well. If it does and you're really happy with it, go ahead and leave a comment down below so we know, and that way the community can have some different options with wireless microphones. If you do decide to go the smartphone wireless mic route, most of them come with a little adapter, and you're going to need to use that adapter before plugging it in to your XLR to 3.5 millimeter adapter, because a smartphone headphone jack is completely different from a microphone headphone jack. It's called a TRRS. So we want to make sure you convert it to a TRS before it goes into the mixer. And lastly, we're going to talk about the wireless headset. Is this actually something you need, and why specifically this one? So basically with wireless headphone sets, specifically with the Bluetooth realm, Bluetooth actually inherently has a lag, and that means what you're hearing is not what's actually playing in real time. You're hearing it maybe half a second later. So this is where it can become a problem if you buy just a regular Bluetooth transmitter with a Bluetooth headset. You're going to hear the music a little bit later. So as you're hearing it, you're going to call out 5, 6, 7, 8, but you're actually calling it out way later than what your students are hearing. So you're probably calling out 5, 6, 7, 8 when it's actually 7, 8, 1, 2. And your students are going to get extremely confused why you're doing that. So that's why I specifically chose this Bluetooth transmitter and headset pairing, because it has an extremely low latency. You can still hear a little bit of it, but it's literally a nanosecond. So when you're hearing that music and you're calling out 5, 6, 7, 8, it's going to be very, very close. Now I know $100 is very expensive, but this is the cheapest one I could find. And of course I listened to a whole bunch of YouTube reviews to see if like how bad the lags were. And this one is by far the lowest you can get at this price point. Now, I know the earbuds with a wire hanging there, it might be a little uncomfortable, but I have a feeling that a lot of you teachers don't want to use the over-the-ear headset. That was the one I was going to go with, but I have a feeling a lot of you, as you're starting to move around, the headset might actually fall off. So that's why I specifically chose the earbud set. Now, could you potentially forego this wireless headset altogether and just use regular headphones or use your speakers intermittently? Not really, especially if you're teaching hip hop and Zumba. Again, if you're going to have to dance with the students to kind of give them an idea of what's going on, you're going to need to hear that music in real time. If you are teaching ballet specifically to advanced students, we are accustomed to using our hands to teach. So if that's the case, then you could forego this altogether and just use regular headphones and teach from your chair from the laptop. That's really the only time you can really do it. But otherwise, if music and demonstrating to music is your main thing that you have to be able to do, you need this low latency headphone set. And hey, that is it for this video, everyone. I know it was a super long one, but I hope it's been helpful and that it's going to help you improve your transition to teaching dance and other athletic classes online. Now, if this video has made all the influence in your purchasing decisions, I again would love if you use my Amazon affiliate links down below. Again, this costs nothing extra to you, it just gives me a little compensation so I can continue making videos like this for all of you. And as always, if you do have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave it down below. I will get to them as fast as I can, but I do highly recommend you check out the whole video again if you need to go through settings, tutorials, or knowing what you need to buy, because I pretty much covered all of that in this video. So without further ado, guys, like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you guys in the next one.